The New York Islanders split their weekend's games, winning on Friday against the Capitals, falling to the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll talk about their response to their embarrassing loss last Wednesday, plus the latest injury updates, all that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. A mixed result for the New York Islanders this weekend. We'll get to all of that. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe something you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, well, send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all season long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Isles hockey with you, game time or anytime. First off, let's wish everybody a happy and a healthy new year. Can't believe it is already 2024, and I wish everybody all the best in this new year. Hopefully a healthier, happier, and more peaceful year ahead for everyone. And of course, hopefully for the New York Islanders, some more success. A mixed bag over the weekend. And let's start with the Sunday night, the New Year's Eve game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And, you know, they lose this one by a 3-1 score. But overall, I do not think that this was a terrible performance. It was sort of an old-fashioned Islanders performance in that they did set up a lot of scoring opportunities, but could not put the puck in the net until very late in the game when Samuel Bolduc scored with, a little more than 6 minutes left. And let's face it, Alex Nedeljkovic of the Pittsburgh Penguins was just red hot in this game, making some unbelievable saves that just, had to be frustrating to the Islanders under the circumstances, because they certainly did have their chances. And, you start off this game. Let's get to the good news. Scott Mayfield back in the lineup. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the show. But no Pierre Engvall. So they move up Hudson Fasching to the second line in place of Engvall, and they end up keeping Matt Martin in on the fourth line. And that didn't exactly work out as far as the second line of Nelson, Palmieri, and Fasching, -2 in this game across the board. They struggled a little bit and did not really create a lot of, a lot of scoring chances, although Nelson did have, 6 shots on goal and Fasching had 2. But again, not able to finish, not able to get that much done. And clearly, Engvall, who has been struggling as of late, probably whether it was an injury or whether he just needed a day of maintenance, so to speak, he sits this one out. And interesting to note that Oliver Wahlstrom still not coming into the game. Clearly, right now, the speed of Julien Gauthier a bigger asset to the New York Islanders than the potential for what Oliver Wahlstrom has been giving them. And it makes a big difference in the lineup to get that speed that they need. And I think it made even more sense to keep Gauthier in the lineup with Engvall, one of the faster players on the Islanders, not in the lineup. So I understand the decision by Lane Lambert in this game. Semyon Varlamov able to be the backup in this game. He was not the backup on Friday night. Ken Appleby was called up from Bridgeport to be the backup. Sorokin played well, 35 saves in 37 shots, and just, not as good as Nedeljkovic, who saved 37 out of 38 shots. And that was just frustrating facing this goaltender who just played better than he tends to play on a regular basis. Not that Nedeljkovic isn't a good goalie and that he hasn't played well for the Pittsburgh Penguins, but as far as the Islanders are concerned, Matthew Barzal doing his thing. He had some chances. Casey Cizikas had 3 really good scoring chances in this game and could not capitalize. Again, part of it, a little bit of bad luck, but most of it, Nedeljkovic. And I got to say this, Matt Martin has been back in the lineup the last couple of games. And to his credit, Matt Martin has been energized in both contests. He played a strong game on Friday and came out with fists ablazing against John Ludwig in the first 7 seconds of the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So to me, that is a good sign because Matt Martin understands he's got to be hungry. If he wants to stay in the lineup when everybody's healthy, and I don't know necessarily that he will, but if he wants to stay in the lineup, he is going to have to give you all of that energy and all of the physicality and the forechecking and, when necessary, defending your teammates. All of that is what you need from a guy like Matt Martin. And yet, you got it over the last couple of games. And that is a definite, necessary, and positive thing for the New York Islanders. I mean, he had 3 hits in the first period against Washington in a little more than 3 minutes of ice time. And then, of course, dropping the gloves right away in this game against the Penguins. And, you can add 3 shots on goal for Matty Martz, and you could see his value to the team. As far as the hero and GOAT of the game, I'm going to give the hero of the game to Ilya Sorokin for his 35 save performance. I guess Samuel Bolduc would be next on that list. But to me, Sorokin did a very admirable job in this one. And, go to the game. This one is tough. I think, the bad play that Bolduc made that led to one of the goals, you could make him the go to the game. But overall, I think it's just the team's failure to put the puck in the net when they had the chance. And boy, did they have a lot of chances in this game. They just couldn't finish. It was sort of deja vu all over again for the Islanders, but not this year's Islanders, more like the Islanders of a couple of years ago. And yeah, it definitely was a frustrating game, but let's say this. Over the course of this entire game, it was not a bad performance. It was not an ideal performance, but it was not a bad performance. They hung tough. They stayed in this game. Yeah, they lost. No, they weren't the better team, especially in the first couple of periods, but this was a solid effort, and they end up with a disappointing loss, but again, not a bad performance to kick off this road trip overall, and you're slowly but surely getting healthier. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We will discuss the big win on Friday for the Islanders against the Washington Capitals. We'll have our hero and goat of that game. Plus, for our Islanders birthday of the day, an original New York Islander who didn't quite make it to the Stanley Cup years, but he was a small and tough defenseman who was a big part of the Islanders in the 1970s. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is so easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet, like live, same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. That's the best way to find popular parlays, and a whole lot more. And look, it's not just the NFL. You got college playoffs coming up. You've got the college basketball, NBA, and of course, you could use your knowledge of the Islanders and the NHL on FanDuel as well. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. The Friday win over the Washington Capitals, final score in that one was 5-1. That was a huge, huge game for the New York Islanders. And they absolutely needed to respond after that embarrassing 7-0 loss. And they went out and they did it. And it was just great to see Alexander Ovechkin, one shot on goal in this game. And Ilya Sorokin should have had a shutout, ends up losing the shutout with like 17 seconds and change left in the game on a funny bounce that the puck took, and it cost him the shutout. But overall, the Islanders clearly responded to the terrible performance that they had against the Penguins 2 days earlier. And the third line really getting the job done. Julien Gauthier, 2 goals in 18 seconds, 3-point night for Gauthier. He was outstanding. You saw that speed and what that speed meant to the Islanders in this particular instance. And then JG Pageau, who we have been rooting for all year, who has had his issues with scoring this year. 2 goals, 2 assists, a +4. Just an outstanding performance right there by Pageau. And oh yeah, by the way, he won 11 out of 14 faceoffs as well. That was absolutely huge. Add 2 assists for Bo Horvat, and you've got the makings of a solid game all the way around. Noah Dobson, a goal and a +3. This was the big answer for the New York Islanders. Why? Because they demonstrated beyond the shadow of a doubt that they could respond to their poor performance of the other day. As we said before, every NHL team has their dud games where nothing goes right, where you're just disappointed in everything that happens on the ice. You didn't come to play. Well, in this game, the Islanders showed that they were mad as heck and they weren't going to take it anymore. And they played one of their better 60-minute efforts in this win. go to the game. To me, it's whatever was on the ice that caused the puck to hop over Sorokin's stick to give up that last goal. And look, Sorokin made a gamble on that play. He wanted to get to the puck instead of covering it. He tried to play it to keep the clock rolling, and it ended up costing him. But to me, that is the closest you're going to get to a GOAT of the game. Hero of the game, it's got to be J.G. Pageau. Julien Gauthier would be a quick, a close second. But J.G. Pageau just absolutely having one heck of a game for the New York Islanders. And this game, I think, said a lot about Lane Lambert and where this team is at. It said something about the resilience of this team, and it absolutely made a big difference to the New York Islanders to show that, yeah, okay, we are not demoralized by our poor performance. We are not sulking after our poor performance. We are here, and we are going to get the job done in a big division game that was a 4-point swing. So I wanted, coming into the weekend, I wanted at least 3 points out of a possible 4 for the New York Islanders against both Washington and Pittsburgh. We ended up having to settle for 2, but to me, the more important thing is how did this team play? And clearly, they played well enough they definitely dominated the Washington game. And they played well enough against Pittsburgh to win if they didn't run into a very hot goalie. And you play that way 10 times, you'll probably win 5 and get a couple of loser points. Notice I didn't say you'd win 7 because this is the Islanders, but you'd win at least 5 of those and probably get something in the neighborhood of 12 points out of those games. I'll take it as a strong bounce back pair of games, even though I definitely would have preferred to beat the Penguins. And oh, by the way, losing twice to the Penguins so far in the first 2 meetings, can't let that get inside your head. Psychologically, it is going to be very important for the New York Islanders to play well again next time they face the Penguins. They played well last night, New Year's Eve, against Pittsburgh, and that was certainly encouraging. But at the same time, you want to get the 2 points. And the fact that you've now played 2 complete games against the Pittsburgh Penguins and only come away with 1 goal in those 2 games, you got to correct that. And I'll add another factor. The power play for the New York Islanders has cooled off as of late. And one thing I noticed, they are not moving the puck as quickly on the power play as they were when they were getting goals. They're still trying to set up these cross-ice passes for one-timers, which is better puck movement than what we've seen before, but they're not moving as much without the puck, and they're not moving the puck as quickly as they did. And I think those are 2 factors as to why they're not able to finish on the power play. They had 1 power play Sunday night against Pittsburgh. They did everything but score. And, honestly, for a large chunk of the game, it seemed like they did everything but score, but they just couldn't quite finish except for the 1 goal by Bolduc. So overall, you asking me about this weekend, yeah, I wanted a 3rd point, but the way they played Friday was outstanding, and the way they played Sunday was solid and not perfect, but not bad. They didn't get blown out. They didn't give up too many high danger chances. Finally, we saw more of a solid A game from Sorokin. I'll take it any time playing like that. Just got to shore up the offense and the finishing, and hopefully things will continue to get better for the New York Islanders. We have got more to get to on today's show. lots of injury updates to talk about. So we'll definitely get to that. Plus our Islanders birthday of the day. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So let's get to the injury updates. We mentioned Scott Mayfield. He has returned to the lineup. Was happy to see him in there against Pittsburgh. Played almost 18 minutes, 17 minutes, 58 seconds, had one shot on goal, 2 hits, 1 block shot. And to me, that just indicates that he is, not afraid to go out there and do his job defensively. I think we'll see a little more minutes-wise from Mayfield. Maybe not right away, but certainly as he gets healthy again. And not a big surprise. And everydayers, we touched on this last week, that it was Robert Bortuzzo who was the first defenseman to sit. He was a healthy scratch against Pittsburgh on New Year's Eve. And I think that move makes the most sense. So good to have Scott Mayfield back in the lineup. Meanwhile, we mentioned that Semyon Varlamov was not the backup goalie for the New York Islanders on Friday night. That was Ken Appleby. It was originally considered, and remember on Friday's show, we mentioned he was given a maintenance day, and we can put that in air quotes if you like. But obviously, whatever it was, whether it was an illness or an injury or just soreness, whatever it was enough to keep Varlamov from being in between the pipes against Washington and even just being the backup against Washington. But Varley back and was the backup against Pittsburgh. So that's good. And look, Ken Appleby, nice paycheck for being the backup goalie against the Washington Capitals. And he was able to be back with the Bridgeport Islanders on Saturday and Sunday. Always good to have. They play a lot of weekend games, almost exclusively weekend games, maybe 80% weekend games in the AHL. So being able to have him back in the lineup for Bridgeport on Saturday was certainly a plus. But then there's another little piece of good news, and that was this: Adam Pelech traveling with the Islanders on this road trip. And, he had a lower body injury suffered way back on November 24th. So he skated with his teammates for the first time since the injury. And the fact that he is on this trip, and, that tells you that the Islanders are thinking that maybe Adam Pelech can return at some point in the next 3 games during this road trip. We'll see what happens with that. But then Ryan Pollock put on the injured reserve, long-term injured reserve by the Islanders. So that will certainly affect, again, the cap. Pelech, Pollock, both still on LTIR, but there's a possibility that Pelech will be able to skate again within the next 3 games and be out there. It's an interesting possibility, but we have to see what happens and how long either one of them remains out of the lineup, but at least progress. He's skating, and that is encouraging for the New York Islanders. Now, as to who is the next defenseman to sit if Pelech does return, it's either going to be Aho or Bolduc. And, logic says that it would be one of those 2 guys, and the other one will skate. I think they would probably keep Aho in the lineup over Bolduc, but I know there are some fans who would probably want it flipped and go the other way around. Either way, though, the first thing that has to happen is that we need Adam Pelech to actually be ready to return, but at least there is some progress. Now, as I mentioned, no Julien Gauthier on, no Pierre Engvall on Sunday. We'll keep an eye on his situation as to whether or not he is just out for one game or he is going to miss a little bit more time than that. But again, interesting to see that they do not go with Oliver Wahlstrom. They keep Matt Martin in the lineup and move Hudson Fasching up to line number 2. Let's see what happens in Denver on Tuesday. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day. And this is sort of a sad one in some ways, because New Year's Day today would have been the 76th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Gerry Hart. Of course, we lost Hart last year at the age of 75. The native of Flin Flon, Manitoba, only 5'9", 175 pounds, but he never backed down from anyone. Had a few cups of coffee with the Red Wings starting in 68, 69, but really became a regular in the NHL in 70, 71 with Detroit, and then was with the Islanders in 72, 73, played 47 games for them that year. Never scored more than 6 goals in an NHL season. Never scored more than 26 points in an NHL season. He was a defensive defenseman and a tough guy, and you didn't mess around with Gerry Hart, even though, again, only 5'9", 175 pounds. Stayed with the Islanders through the 78-79 season, then was selected by the Quebec Nordiques in the expansion draft, played a season plus in Quebec, and then 3 seasons with the St. Louis Blues before hanging up his skates after the 82-83 season. 730 career NHL games for Gerry Hart, 29 goals, 179 points, 1,240 penalty minutes. Add 3 goals, 15 points, and 175 penalty minutes in 78 playoff games, all of them except for 20. So 58 of those with the Islanders, and he was a big part of the 75 playoff run. And again, just a great teammate and an underappreciated guy. If you saw Gerry Hart play game in and game out, you really rooted for him and enjoyed watching him do his thing, and his teammates always appreciated him. His best game as an Islander, offensively at least, how about January 6th, 1976, at the Nassau Coliseum? The Kansas City Scouts, who then became the Colorado Rockies and then became the New Jersey Devils, were the opponent. Bill McKenzie, their goalie, Billy Smith, the goalie for the Islanders, and the Islanders end up crushing the Scouts by a score of 8-1. But for Gerry Hart, 2 goals, 2 assists, a +3, and he scored on both of his shots on goal in this one. His first goal coming early in the third period, Brian Trottier, the assist. Then he scored the final goal of the game with a little less than 5 minutes left. Andre St. Laurent with the assist on that one. He assisted on goals by Brian Trottier and Clark Gillies. So a big 4-point night for Gerry Hart, who unfortunately, again, left us too soon last May 12th. Gerry Hart is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone again for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we will have the latest injury updates and a full preview of the Islanders game in Denver against the Colorado Avalanche as this important road trip continues. So make sure you join us for that. Again, happy and a healthy new year to everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.